Thank you, everybody, for coming. This is an amazing, amazing group of people. We're here to tackle how to book gigs in 2020, if gigs are to be had, or how to get ready for 2021. And, oh, man, Mike put together an amazing panel here of people who would know this inside and out from all sorts of different angles. So I'll just go one by one. If you could just introduce yourself and, where your main business of operations and what you do for that business. We'll start there with you, Peter.
My name's Peter Ore. I have a company called Anchors Aweigh, and I have venues in Denver and in Dallas. I have the Oriental Theater in Denver, and in Dallas I have Gas Monkey and Gas Monkey Live, and I've been doing concerts for 25 years or so.
Thank you. Kim?
Hi, my name's Kim Schon. I'm an artist manager. I've been doing that for about 10 years now. I've worked with stadium level arena acts down to club acts, and currently manage Motionless and White and the Messenger Birds, based in Los Angeles.
Awesome. Anthony?
Hey, gang. Founder and owner of Come and Take It Productions in Austin, Texas. Been booking shows here for 10 plus years or so. And co-owner of Come and Take It Live. We opened just over 3 years ago, or right around 3 years ago.
Excellent. Thank you. And Dave?
Yeah, I am a co-founder, co-owner of Sound Talent Group. We're an agency. We book tours for bands, everything from Motionless and White with Kim to Parkway Drive and Lamb of God and Run DMC and Killswitch Engage and August Burns Red and many more. And also started Velocity Records, and I also own the record label and amongst other businesses. But that's a little bit of what I do, and I'll give you the same preface I gave these guys before, but we're all working from home, so I apologize in advance if you get a couple dogs barking in the background from time to time. And also, I've not shaved or cut my hair under quarantine, so I normally do look like I live in a home and not on the street.
Thank you. And Mike?
Hey, guys. Mike, founder of Outerloop Coaching, along with you, Paul, and manager over at 10th Street Entertainment. Manage Ice Nine Kills, and yeah, that's really it.
Peter, can we start with you with your venues? Are you, with the fact that you've got nothing going on right now, just like every other venue across the world, are you looking at booking at a particular high margin shows or particular types of shows once your doors are able to open again?
It's so hard to say with not knowing how we're going to open or what our capacities are going to be limited to. Because they could say you could open in May, but you can only do 200 people or 50 people, or you can open in August and you can do whatever number. So we're kind of been talking amongst ourselves for the partners in my different ventures to say, what are we going to do? And when they say, hey, you can open at 200 cap, what are we going to do? Because we need to make some money. So we have kind of different plans for the different ways that it could be opened. And we're just waiting for the information just like everybody else.
Gotcha. And should booking agents and artists, even like local artists in your town, should they be keeping their ear to the ground for these types of announcements? And then what slots are going to be available for which types of bands?
I mean, if they open on a more limited basis where we can at least put some people in our venues, but at such a limited capacity that it prohibits Dave's bands and everybody's bands from touring still, because nobody, August Burns Red's not going to go around and play 100 cap venues, or maybe they will, I don't know. But if that happens, then we're going to have to fill it with local bands, because that's who's sitting around waiting to make some money too. So if it opens on a smaller amount, we'll be ready to hit up all our local bands and start doing as many local shows as we can, given the capacity.
Excellent. So, Anthony, anything different with the way that you're approaching things at Come and Take It?
No, man, to be honest with you, everything that Peter just said is right on par, I think, with, I would imagine every promoter in the country right now, just kind of waiting to see, you know, when we're able to begin operating again and what kind of restrictions we're going to have when that begins. You know, I feel like the venues themselves might find themselves in, I don't want to say a better scenario, because depending on capacity and overhead, you know, it might cost them more just to be open than it would for them to be closed, but maybe they can open for small local shows and for alcohol sales and things like that. But I feel comparatively that's going to be a drop in the bucket. So we're just kind of waiting, to see what we can and can't do.
The other thing I want to add is it's hard to tell what the public's going to want to do. So while we want to have some shows just to bring some semblance of normalcy back to life, you know, it's nice to want to make some money because none of us are making it right now. But at the same time, just to have a little bit of regularity back into life and give people that would be nice. But again, you know, who knows who's going to come show up when we do have those capacities.
Dave, is this the same thing you're hearing from the promoters you talk to? What's your strategy going to be from the other side of the desk?
Yeah, you know, it is. The problem right now is that there's not a single person that knows more than another person, right? It's not like, you know, I'm about to tell you guys something that none of you have heard and vice versa. Like, we're all going off the same information and just interpreting it the best that we can. And, you know, and so it's really hard. I think the hardest part, and it's kind of what Peter started to say, but like, I think the hardest part is just not knowing, right? Like, even if, they said right now, like, there will not be a single show in any capacity for the next 18 months. But after that, we're back rolling. At least then we'd have like, well, obviously that's not something we want to hear. At least we'd be able to plan and prepare, right? But like, we don't know if we're going to be allowed to do shows in a month, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. We don't know what capacities we'll be allowed to do. We don't know if Ohio is going to allow tours and California won't. And, you know, so like, it starts to become really difficult. We were talking today over here at Sound Talent Group about, like, it seems pretty clear that like the red states are the ones that are going to probably be the first to open, right? Like, you know, people, you know, those are the Trump states. And, you know, obviously Trump doesn't usually make decisions with his brain. It's more just whatever goes. So he's like, let's just get rolling. And so all the red states, like, we were literally talking today, well, do we book literally just tours of the red states? And then maybe those are able to play first and the blue are not. You don't really know, but like, you know, Peter touched on something interesting. You know, he made the comment about, like, you know, like a band like August Burns Red, who normally could sell 1,000 to 2,000 capacity venues out pretty much anywhere. Are they going to go play 100 cap room? And I think what we're starting to see right now is that because bands need to make money, I'm starting to hear bands that we work with say things like, yeah, if that's what we have to do to go play a show, then we will. So instead of doing a $27 ticket in a 2,000 seater, let's go do a $75 ticket in a 200 seater. Maybe we do 2-3 nights there. And that way these bands can just get back on the road and start making a living, you know? So those are conversations that are happening. I think that the second shows are allowed to play, we'll end up getting creative and figuring out how to make it happen. Some bands are not going to want to do that type of thing. They're used to kind of playing to a certain standard in terms of production or crew, and it won't work in those scenarios. And other bands are going to say, yeah, we are used to that, but we don't give a shit. Like, we got to pay our mortgage. So it's going to be really interesting to see. But I think the hardest part, going back to what I was saying before, is just not knowing. Like, even if it was really far away, but at least we had a date to work towards, we could plan. You know, everyone on this call, whether it's when we work with Mike on Ice Nine Kills or Kim with Motionless or any of our other bands, we're really used to strategizing and figuring out, okay, like, if we've got a record coming out during this time, this is what a cycle could look like. And right now, like, strategy's kind of gone out the window. It's just kind of been like, well, we'll try to book a tour in June, and then, all right, well, that's not looking like it's going to work. Let's try it in August, and then let's try it in October, and now let's try 2021. And you know,
can I get strategic with you for a second and just put the August Burns Red States tour together with you right now?
I like that. That's
That's
good.
great.
That is great. I will give you credit when I tell them that idea. Don't you worry.
Kim, am I
That's
right
awesome.
that Motionless and White were on the road when everything hit the fan? Am I correct in that?
Yeah, we were just at the tail end of a tour. Probably one of the most successful tours we've had in the band's career. We were on a co-headline with Beartooth all of January, and it was right at the end of that tour that this news started to come out about COVID-19, and there wasn't a lot of information at the time to really know how that was going to affect anything at that point. And we had a break coming up after that tour for February, March. Our next tour was supposed to be in April, May, festivals mixed with headline dates, and, a really great spring tour that we were looking forward to with a lot of great bands that we hadn't toured with before that we were really excited about. So when more and more information was coming out and we fell into that bracket of artists starting to look at that April, May timeframe, we thought, well, it seems like only March is questionable. We don't have any shows in March. We should be fine. And then, obviously things weren't fine. And we became one of the artists that said, okay, we're going to take the spring and we're going to push it to the summer. And we'll be totally fine because the summer will, everything will be back to normal. Now, even more information has come out, and that summertime period has become very questionable. And we're starting to look at the rest of the year like we may not tour at all. Tour postponements and all that has suddenly gone out the window. And, we're trying to remain hopeful in that maybe in the fall and the winter, we'll be able to make up for some of these shows or do something cool for the fans, but we just don't know yet. And we're also in a position where we're in the middle of our record cycle. So we had all of 2020 lined up. Shows are being booked more and more in advance. So by the time it was January, we had everything booked until the fall. And all that going away raises the question, well, how do you start 2021? Do you still start in the middle of your record cycle and make up for all those tours and try and do the June European festivals and everything that's getting moved? Or do you make the new record now and start 2021 on a new record cycle?
Another ton of people are on the edge of their seats waiting for you to answer that question.
I'm waiting.
Give us a scoop. Well, what is it that your client is saying? I mean, there's so much confusion and fear and all that. I mean, is this one of those times where, as a manager, you can still remain on the same page with your client?
Yeah, I think in some ways it's brought us even closer together than we already were, because my job is crisis management pretty much all day long anyway, and here we are in a real crisis. And I'm very fortunate to work with a band and a team of people where we can have really meaningful conversations about this stuff and work towards a plan together that everyone feels really great about. The band, they've been incredibly understanding, and their position is like, look, we're going to be okay. Like, we just hope that at some point we'll be able to make up these shows for the fans in a safe environment and go back out there and do what we love to do. I mean, I think we can all on this call agree that the number one thing that bonds people together and gets them through really hard times is music. So we want to be able to go back and bring the live show to the fans again, but of course at a time where we can do that safely. And to touch on some of the other points about going into smaller rooms potentially, that's something we're discussing. I think looking at the fall and winter time frame, I mean, the traffic's probably going to be insane. Everyone trying to play, I'm talking specifically about the club circuit, but challenging those rooms and every tour going up and trying to make up for losses. And what does the ticket buyer look like in the fall of 2020? What does that financially look like for people? What do those restrictions look like on venues. So, we're taking all of that into consideration and just trying to do our best to eventually get back out there and do what we love to do.
Mike, can you talk about that? Also, you're coming from the manager perspective as well. If just talk for a little bit about this idea that, there being a lower capacity, it just seems like every venue is just looking to sell out every single show and do so in as far in advance as possible, so they don't have the headache anymore. I'm sure Peter and Anthony can speak to that much more than I could. But as a manager, what are you thinking about strategically about how you get your client into the venues once this logjam opens up and the phones start ringing again?
I'm thinking much differently after the first 10 minutes of this panel, I'll tell you that. That said, I think, back to Dave's point where nobody knows anything, or at least we all know the same amount of information. I mean, thankfully with Ice Nine Kills, we have a pretty solid plan, and we've been out in front of it to a pretty good degree already. That said, we had a tour, much like, Kim described, we had an April-May arena tour supporting Five Finger Death Punch that, as of now has moved to September, October, November. It would be really interesting. I'm sitting there thinking, okay, what happens if only the red states play, and I'm actually, as Dave was describing that, I was like, okay, what do you do if you're trying to route something, right? Are you booking, red states with a day off in hopes that a blue state is going to, open up during that period? I think it's just such kind of a crapshoot. And I don't know. I think we will change our perspective as information changes. But yeah, as all these guys just described, if we're not already thinking 2 steps ahead, once the information changes, if it changes in line with the way that the people thinking 2 steps ahead is right, then we're behind the curve, if that makes sense. So as of right now, today, I feel good. We'll see. Throughout the rest of this panel, I might have to take a breather, go get a towel and wipe some sweat off my forehead.
Well, Peter, you talked earlier about how information is so key and the decision on when venues can open and what their capacities are going to be. It seems like just the nature of the beast is going to be like, okay, tomorrow. It's not going to be like in 30 days, and therefore you can kind of plan, I assume. So what is the sort of low-hanging fruit for you as a venue operator and as a promoter that will be the methodology for people to contact you so that they can get booked and have it happen quickly?
Yeah, I don't know. With the red state, blue state thing, I live in a blue state, and I also have, which is Colorado, and then I have Dallas. So I'm looking for 2 different plans completely. I've talked to my Dallas partners about how we're going to get going once we can. And also the situation in Dallas is interesting because Gas Monkey has a restaurant. So that restaurant will be able to open up in the first phase, but then will they let us put a band on stage while the restaurant is open, even if it's not like a paid concert where we could do local stuff? So there's a lot of, again, so many questions, but I kind of don't think it's going to be, okay, you can open tomorrow. They're going to be like venues can open on August 15th or whatever, right? So you're going to have plenty of time to see, and they might say, hey, we're going to see how phase 1 is going. And then by the time we get to phase 3, this would be the plan. So I think since there's no national guideline, you're just waiting for your local governor to make the call. And I think the local governors have been providing a lot more information than the federal, obviously. So once they give us that, I expect, I'm still taking holds throughout. People are still trying to confirm June shows, and I'm like, you're crazy. I don't think that's going to happen. But I'm still taking all these holds and trying to confirm things through the fall. And, fortunately, for the most part, I do business with my friends for the majority, like Dave and all the guys at Sound and everyone I work with, I've been doing business with a long time for the most part. So, we all work really well together and are always talking anyway, even if there's nothing to talk about. Dave and I will talk, or Matt or Tim or whatever. So, I don't think there's a grand plan here.
Anthony,
Yeah, I think.
oh, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, I was just going to say, like, I think, to that point, I think that venues will start to come back online kind of the same way they went offline. Like, I'm sure you guys remember those first few days, certain cities were saying, oh, no shows, no gatherings of over 1,000 people. And then it was no gatherings over 750 and then 500. So I think it's going to come back online very similarly. Maybe they'll say, okay, gatherings of up to 100 people are allowed. And then they see that kind of goes okay. And okay, now gatherings up to 300 or 400, and it slowly rolls out. But the other point to that is that what I was saying earlier about convincing some of the bigger bands to just go play really small just so they can get back on the road. The other thing that's nice about that is that if you have a band that can sell 300 tickets playing a 300 capacity room, you need your 2, 3, 4 month on sale, and you need kind of that traditional rollout of marketing to make that work. Now, if you have a band that sells 2,000 tickets going to play 300 capacity rooms, we can announce those shows the same day. So like if tomorrow they told Peter, you can have 300 people in your room at Denver, and, we could literally the next day, that morning, announce, an August Burns Red show or a Wonder Years show or an Ice Nine Kill show or whatever, for that night. And it'd be fine because, so like, that's another thing that kind of works with these bands kind of going doing these extreme underplays is like, we don't need any time to market shows like that. Like, if you're going to play that small for bands that big, we'll book them on a day's notice, literally.
And I love Dave. He's always thinking like an agent that just assumes that the manager is going to get the band to Colorado that day.
That's right.
Driving.
Anthony, when talking about something like what Dave's talking about, is there a place at all for local openers? Do you need to bother? Is it something that you want to do?
I mean, me personally, I'm always down to have locals, man. I'm always, we here in Austin, especially, there's just such a large pool of talent. I'm always in favor of trying to give them a shot as long as they're professional, carry themselves, and hit those bulletin points, whatnot. I think that assuming that we open or are able to open sooner than later, that's fine and all, but I mean, like we're all saying, these tours are getting pushed further and further back. So just because we may or may not be able to open, let's say best case scenario, right? They're saying the city of Austin can open as of May 8th. I'm sure they'll get pushed back, but if for some reason we're able to, cool. But every tour, every show has been canceled. We now don't have anything. I think we have some small local stuff that we had in the books for like the end of May, but I think we're going to have to heavily rely on just filling the calendar with whatever we can, like, hey, locals, like, look, man, you've been wanting to get into the venue for so long. Here's your chance. Like, you piece together some bills, let's just do whatever we can to see how comfortable folks are with coming out. I think that's going to be a big test too. Peter mentioned that earlier. Even if bands can get out and get on the road and they give us a thumbs up, are folks still going to be kind of hesitant? Are they going to be afraid? We don't know, but the local stuff I think is going to be important for a while, just local bills, man, left and right.
Yeah.
I think Anthony and I also maybe a little bit better position being indie promoters that were a bit more live and we can do whatever we want kind of quickly versus so if they open up, I can just be like, yeah, let's do some shows. And whether that's local or if Dave wants to magically, teleport one of his bands to my venue overnight, versus, the behemoth companies are a bit more clumsy and clunky, and might be harder for them to do that. I would suspect that they don't move that quick in their operation and they have a bit more corporate liability, just a speculation, of course, but I think that we're in a decent position to kind of grasp whatever that first stuff that can come through quickly and easily and work out good deals because it's just us doing our own thing.
And Peter is just speculating because he never worked at Live Nation or AEG, by the way.
Kim, a friend of mine and I were joking the other night about what bands would we die to see. Like, like the idea being that, like, that even if the governor of Texas, in his infinite wisdom, decided to open up the venues, perhaps we're not like the right demographic, but we're going to be a little more hesitant to go to gigs than probably the venues would like. So with Motionless in White, you guys have a very devoted fan base. Not to suggest that if they go out, they're going to go out to die, but are you hearing from the fans that they want Motionless in White to be performing right now?
When we initially put up our tour postponement for the April-May dates, we weren't sure what the feedback was going to be. And it was so overwhelmingly positive, and the fans were so supportive, and it wasn't about the dates being moved. It wasn't about ticket refunds. It was more so that expression of, we're just so happy that you plan to come back and do the show at some point, and we would rather everyone take the measures that we need to take right now, and we look forward to going to this show in the future. Motionless, like you said, our fan base is really hardcore, and when it gets to the point that we can do shows again, easing back into it and looking at it in a way where we do go back into smaller rooms potentially, I think is a win-win situation for both the band and the fans, because we love playing those intimate shows. I mean, if you look at our track record, we've done tours called Beyond the Barricade that were specifically set up to be in 250 cap to 500 cap rooms when we could be playing, 1,500 to 3,000 cap rooms, because we love being up close and up front with the band, with the fans. So, we look forward to trying to provide that experience when the time is right. Those fans have been super supportive and are just excited that at some point in the future there will be that opportunity again. And we're not really seeing a lot of demand for ticket refunds and things along that nature.
Awesome.
I think that's going to be. I think people are actually going to be pretty surprised by that. I think I'm hearing a lot of people say that, fans are not going to want to be going to shows and, social distancing, and they're not going to want to be in venues and close to people and all that. And don't get me wrong, I'm not naive, and I think there's some truth to it. But I also think there's a flip side to that, which is that people have been just stuck in their homes by themselves for, what will be months, and people want to get out. They just reopened the local parks here in San Diego where I live. And so, we take, my wife and I, we go to the park with the dogs a couple times a day usually, and we haven't been able to go. And they just opened them yesterday morning, and we've already been 3 times. And every time we've gone, it's been packed. People are just so excited to get out of their homes and that they're allowed to go and do this stuff now. And I think you're going to see a lot of that at these shows too, where people are so excited that they can just get out of their house and go see their friends and go see bands they love. And while I know there wasn't a social distancing aspect to this, there is a bit of a case study to that, which is that back during the Great Depression, when people couldn't afford, didn't have discretionary income, couldn't afford to do anything other than, try to pay their bills, movie theaters at that time had the highest box office numbers they had ever had in history up till that time. And was because people, intuitively you would think, well, if people can't pay their rent, they're not going to go buy movie tickets, right? But the reality was that people needed an escape from the difficulties and the stress of the reality of that point in time. And I think we're going to see a lot of that now as well. I do think it's somewhat demo specific. I don't think the 70-year-old Hall & Oates fan is necessarily going to want to go out and sit close to people and all that stuff, because those are the people that are most adversely affected by this disease. However, a healthy 20-year-old Ice Nine Kills or Motionless in White fan or I Prevail fan, I personally, maybe I'm wrong, but I think the majority of those kids are just going to want to get the hell out of their house and go to a rock show and are not going to care. And so I think there's actually going to be a really big demand, and I think that we could see a really strong return. Maybe I'm being naive to think that, but and maybe I'm just being optimistic, but I think that there's some positives
Well,
to what we could see coming back out of this.
I mean, if you're right, and then it seems like a lot of bands are have the potential of shooting above, punching above their weight when they walk into a venue where before they might have only been expected to bring in 200 and 250, and now they're bringing in maybe 50% more than that because people just want to see a gig, whereas before they were asked, that sort of thing. So starting with like, how are you hoping to kind of cut through the logjam that is going to that will exist and get the attention of promoters for certain artists over other booking agents who are also going to be pitching their artists? And then can you also talk about like 2021 and festivals? And I would imagine there's going to be that much more demand on the booking side as well, right?
Yeah. Obviously there's a lot to unpack there. And what you just said, there's, that's a lot of stuff that we're all working through. And, going back to what I said before, I don't think anyone actually knows the answers, but I would speculate that what I've been advising a lot of my clients is that if there's a new tour that we're working on, like let's say we were originally booking a tour for the fall that never got announced, didn't actually go on sale before all this happened. Those tours, I'm now advising all of those artists to move their tours to 2021, because I think that despite the fact that I do believe people want to get out of their house and go to shows, I also think that there is still the challenge of how much money people have. And maybe before they were choosing which 3 or 4 shows they wanted to go to that month, and now they're going to have to choose which 1 or 2 shows they go to. And so what I've been advising my clients that we're going to put new tours on sale, move them to 2021. And then rescheduled tours are still, potentially, hopefully, maybe going to happen later this year. But the logic there has been, if you have a tour that's already sold thousands of tickets and, you have a tour that sold 0 tickets, I think it's a lot easier to convince fans to not ask for their money back once it's already gone than it is to convince fans to spend new money that's in their pocket when they have bills to pay and they're having trouble paying them. So what I've been, really advising all my artists that have tours that were not on sale is don't go competing against tours that have thousands of tickets sold and already have tens and hundreds and millions of dollars in the bank when we have 0. Like, let's push those to next year where there's less competition. And then the tours that have already sold a lot of tickets, the goal is to announce new dates as soon as possible to re-engage those fans and not have them stressed about, is this going to happen, them wanting refunds and all of that, but instead really trying to get the message out that this tour is happening. We'd still like you to come. If you want to get a refund and need a refund, we'll offer that, but we're hoping that we don't get that many. And I think what we're seeing a lot of is that the refunds are not flowing in as heavily as some people may have anticipated. But time will tell, because there's still a lot of time before all these shows end up actually playing. So see what happens.
So wait, you're going to do an August Burns Red States tour of movie theaters in 2021?
That's right. That's right.
Awesome.
Mike, when you hear all this, like, are you changing or thinking more about your client as a headliner than, bundling with other artists, that sort of thing? I mean, it's kind of tough to say, but I mean, what's your kind of perspective on the future of the package versus the headline?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things come to mind. Early on, if we get the opportunity to go play some small venues, I think that's surely in line, just as Kim described. Motionless and Ice Nine Kills have done so much together over the years and have similar fan bases and dedicated fans. It'd be amazing to do. I'm also thinking about how half my gear for the band is still in Europe, trying to transit back to the States because, we got interrupted on a tour with Papa Roach and Hollywood Undead over there. Of course, we can make things work. We've got guys scattered all over the place. So those immediate things might be a bit of a challenge. What I love about being a manager, and, Dave and I have worked together, and, the agent for Ice Nine Kills works under Dave, is like, he's the expert at this stuff. I'm sitting here spending most of my time figuring out ways to continue to drive revenue for the band while we're off the road, and allowing the agent who's gathering this intel, who's talking to these great promoters, to kind of come to us with the advice And thankfully, so I've heard some of this, it changes day by day, but I'm confident that, I've got an intelligent agent that works for a great company that's going to come to me knowing all that we've got. When I talk to him each week, we're going to, I don't need to change the opinion of what we're doing on this call. As to whether we package or not, I mean, we've all seen this business, I think the bands that creatively package and are willing to put the egos aside build better experiences for the fans. And I think we're going to see a ton of that in 2021. It's going to be really hard to actually go and do things on your own, is my guess.
Well, that brings up an interesting point. I want to ask this of Anthony. Like, as a promoter, if you're being pitched on, there's two things being pitched for the same date, and one is just a headliner, and you've got to fill it with support versus a package tour. How are you looking at that, and how are you balancing even ticket prices at the moment when you consider that sort of stuff?
Man, that's a good question. I would think that right now, kind of testing the waters and trying to see if folks are going to come out or not, providing something that, has more bang for the buck, more bands, already put together as opposed to one, and, some local support. I think just kind of, really sweetening the deal as best as possible is probably going to be the best route to take. Not that I wouldn't want to do everything that we could to facilitate a date for that one single headliner, because as we're all discussing, everyone is they need to get back on the road, right? So we're all going to do everything that we can to make that happen. But I feel like those complete packages are going to be a little bit easier to solidify and get folks out, But then that kind of also brings up the topic of all these tours that we're having to reschedule, they're being postponed and whatnot. Juggling those with these cool killer packages that are being put together, and just this whole logjam idea, I guess, is what it's being dubbed as. It's like, man, okay, we want to do everything we can to facilitate this new date for a package, but there's this killer complete package that's coming out, now what do we do? Like, we want to take care of everyone, and I think that's going to be kind of, we're going to have to juggle a lot of stuff and be pretty strategic about that as well,
Kim, with all of these, the one thing that I'm thinking is almost a bit of a chain reaction in that you've got booking agents who are going to be trying very, very hard to get a hold of the promoter's attention. But I would imagine it's going to be also more challenging than usual for you as a manager to get your booking agent's attention, because they're going to have all their clients ringing. So what are you thinking about as far as how to make that connection with the booking agent or booking agents that you work with, and what should people be thinking about when they think about getting the attention of anybody in order to get a gig?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of traffic right now for sure. And look, everyone's trying to figure it out day by day. I'm very lucky in that I get to work with Sound Talent Group and Dave and Matt Anderson and our team over there who, like Mike was saying, are very forward thinking. I mean, I can't tell you how many calls I've gotten from Matt during this time where he's 10 steps ahead of me on where Motionless in White touring, or how Motionless in White touring could potentially look for later this year and next year, and how, this continuous game of Tetris looks. Because, some days I'm like, we're not going to tour for another year, and there's not going to be any space, and no one's going to go to shows, and I have those panic moments. But he kind of talks me off the ledge, and Sound Talent Group is so great at making everyone feel like it's going to be okay, and there's going to be opportunities. And I, much like Mike said, rely on them to get that information and talk to the promoters and help come up with the best plans and walk us through why something makes sense and why we should change how we're potentially going to do a tour. I think something that we're facing right now that is one of the more challenging points is the festival circuit and what that looks like in terms of rebooking, because there are festivals we were supposed to be on this year that got canceled, several festivals, and those some of them are being postponed. Whether they'll happen or not this year, I don't know. Other festivals are just focusing on 2021. The conversations with those promoters has been so different across the board, where some promoters are approaching it with, we're going to give the 2020 lineups who got canceled the first right of refusal to play in 2021, and then book everything else around that. Then there's the other side of it where promoters are wiping the slate clean and saying, we're starting from scratch in 2021, and our lineups are going to be based primarily on who's on cycle at that point. And you might just be shit out of luck because of the timing and not get an offer for a festival. But as we all know, those festival seasons, like, those are anchors for a lot of bands, and you rely on having 3 or 4 specific anchors to be able to route in between those and make a run financially successful, in terms of reaching a lot of markets and getting to a lot of fans. How does that work if you're only guaranteed maybe 1 or 2 of those festivals and some of the other shows? And that's something new that I think we're starting to discuss how we work around that.
Peter, how are you going to work around that from the promoter side?
Just listening to all this, it reminds me of something on my end where there's all these bands that have to reschedule, and we're still rescheduling because, bands moved it from March to June, and now June's looking bad, so they're pushing that. And then there's still new stuff, even though Dave's smart in pushing his new stuff to next year, which is, I agree, that is a good move, Dave. But it makes me have to kind of take the A and B shows and place them in, and then the B- to below shows, I have to say I can't even take your holds right now, because there's this whole level of filler stuff that as promoters we do. Hey, I have an open Saturday night in 6 weeks. This band that I won't name any bands but wants to play. Okay, I'll book that on 6 weeks notice because it's an open night. But then now that band wants to push to November, which is going to be insanely packed. And I just have to be like, I'm sorry, I can't do it. So on my level, it's just like there's a whole bunch of stuff I just am shoving to the side to focus on all that A and B talent to put in there to make sure that stuff is taken care of. So it is interesting on the booking strategy there, because you don't know if you're going to wind up filling all these dates when you push half of this other stuff to the side. But at the same point, I'd rather just have all the good shows and not have shows every single night, because people don't have money to go to shows every single night, or aren't going to want to expose themselves every 5 nights a month to potentially getting the virus or whatever.
Yeah, oh, totally. Anthony, I really want to ask you about from the festival promoters perspective, because you had a festival you had to cancel just a few weeks ago, or days ago, actually, I think.
Days,
yeah. Yeah, so heartbroken. So I want to ask you about that, but Peter also brought up a real interesting point about those A shows, B shows. I would imagine the venues and promoters are all anxious to recover as much of their lost funds as possible. Do you look at things like expanding the palette of genres that you put into your venue, or that sort of thing, as a way to bring in more people and be able to be open more nights?
Yeah, definitely. We like to consider ourselves, genre neutral, so to speak. I mean, in-house, lots of metal, lots of punk, lots of, hardcore and stuff. But we're fortunate to work with some other outside promoters that provide hip hop and EDM and stuff like that. But I think, given these circumstances, I think it's going to kind of light a fire under my ass to actively, seek out more artists, more genres and things like that to kind of fill the gaps, but to do it, like Peter's saying, do it strategically to where it's not just this whole, just wave of shows and people have to, they can't afford to go to all these events, right? Still try to be smart about it and still try to kind of pick and choose. But, it's tough when it comes to like the club festival stuff, fortunately, we had a handful of packages that had kind of merged to make that happen, and they're rescheduling, independently, and we're able to make those packages work at different times, but you know, that club fest, you know, if it won't happen, basically. You know, we can't line those packages up again, unfortunately. But hopefully the people that were coming out to see this band and this band and this band, they'll come out for those individual shows.
Dave, there's been some news about venues looking to book residencies, you know, 3, 4, 5 nights. You're thinking creatively about all sorts of things. Is that something that you think could become more widespread as a way to make it more possible for your artists to tour? And then the second question that sort of tacks on to that is that something economically that the artist will want to do?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something we're exploring, you know, for certain artists. Some artists don't want to do that stuff and kind of can't scale down to make it work. And other artists can, you know, but in order to make things profitable, a lot of these artists are going to have to start making some sacrifices on production, maybe taking a little bit less crew. You know, everyone's going to kind of need to be a little bit more conservative with their budgets moving forward, because everyone's got a lot of lost time and lost revenue to make up. So, and with the economy being what it is and what it's going to be, ticket prices are probably going to have to come down a bit, which means money's, you know, guarantees are going to come down. And so, without a doubt, I think artists, you know, we're exploring all that stuff, but it's going to have to come with a larger understanding from like the overall climate and situation out there from managers and bands. And, you know, that's something we're working really hard on, is to keep the expectations of today's realities, you know, kind of in line with all these bands. And I think most bands and managers, I think, get it, because everyone's dealing with this. Like, there isn't anyone that's not affected by it. And I think that the sad thing is that that's the truth. Like, everyone's being hurt by this. But on the flip side of that coin is that there's comfort in knowing that, like, no one's alone right now. You know, like, everyone's in this together, and that's been kind of cool, because I think that there's been a synergy with agents and promoters and managers, and even agents with other agencies, all kind of working together in a way that you've never really seen. And I'm really hoping a lot of that kind of continues even when all this is done. Like, I think that's been something that's been really kind of nice to see everyone come together and try to get through this, because, you know, it's the only way we're going to get through it is by working together and figuring it out.
Dave, this goes to you and maybe the promoters as well. I mean, I'm hearing rumors about the bigger companies totally restructuring deals for shows that are already confirmed. Is that something that you can talk about? And Peter and Anthony, is that something that you guys are doing as well? And yeah, what does the future look like? Is it all door deals?
Yeah, so we've been approached. We had a long call with the head of global touring at AEG last week to walk us through their plans. They are restructuring all their deals. They're basically considering every deal they've made prior to this as a deal that is kind of falls under force majeure and allows them the ability to renegotiate. And they're even renegotiating shows that were sold out, because they have the belief that shows that are selling really well will get refunds, and they don't want to be stuck holding that bag. And you know, I've heard a lot of other agents different perspectives on this, and mine is that I think we have to back their play on that, because I think that a lot of people are not going to come out of this, and venues are going to close, and promoters are going to go out of business, and we all need each other to make this thing work. And so, you know, the idea that people can lose, you know, more money right when they come back after, you know, losing all the revenue they lost while being shut down, a lot of people just can't afford to do that. So we as agents, I think, share a bit of a responsibility to try to also help figure out how to, you know, get them to survive that. So that's definitely something that we're thinking about. You know, but Live Nation, on the flip side, they're still kind of figuring out their deals and exploring what that's going to look like. They've run a few different models by us and other agents, and but they haven't locked in anything. They're still kind of making final determinations there. And then the independent promoters, a lot of them are working together. there's like this independent promoter coalition that a couple people put together. I don't know if Anthony or Peter, you guys have been in any of those conversations, but I know something I've been seeing on pretty much all my deals from the indie promoters is that, you know, if a show doesn't gross the guarantee, then the guarantee changes to be 100% of the gross and some of the things like that, just to protect some of their downside risk. And again, like, I'm not opposed to those things. And I think that my mentality with all of the promoters and with all the managers when speaking to them about this has been, I am open to helping them decrease their risk because I think it is important that we help everyone stay in business. But if we're going to help them decrease our risk, we need to increase our walkout potential. So I'm totally down to take deals to my artists where the front ends are lower, but the back ends have to be higher because it's just simple risk versus reward. If we're going to decrease their risk, our reward needs to go up. And if you believe in your artists and you're going to book them smart and book it the right way, then ultimately you have the ability to make more money that way than you did before. And I think that as long as we have that ability, I'm all for, you know, helping decrease some of the risk and helping people stay in business. You know, we need promoters just as much as they need us, and we're all in this together, and we're all struggling through it. So we all need to figure it out together.
Anthony or Peter, you want to fight him on that?
No, I said it. I'm fortunate that in doing this a long time, I just deal with mostly people who are my homies at this point. And so we have great relationships and we're friends inside the business and outside the business. So we all want to stay here and, you know, have our kids' college fund stay intact and be able to not sell our houses and all that. So I'm all about the creative deals on my end. I'm still giving guarantees to the bands that should get guarantees, but I am sending less, but I'm making it versus a straight higher percentage of the door than normally I would do on a door percentage, because that is a very fair way to do it. We're all in this together. I can't be the ATM machine that's taking all the risk for everything, because again, none of us know what's going to happen or what the fans are going to do or if parents are going to let their kids go see shows. So I'll give a little bit less risk for me up front, but a bigger reward for you to walk out with. If the business is there, by all means, make more money, because that means I'm making money and we're all making money, and everybody should be happy at that point.
Kim, does this all make you happy? And will it make your client happy?
Yeah, you know, we've touched on these conversations already with my clients, and like we're all saying, we're all in it together, and we're moving forward with the thought that, you know, we're probably going to make less money on shows. There's probably going to be a lot more restrictions and parameters, at least for a while, when we do play shows, and we want to see our partners succeed. So as long as we're all succeeding together, we're all for the changes that need to be made. You know, it makes sense to me, it makes sense to them. And I think if we can get everyone on the same page where, you know, we take the losses together and we win together, then that's how this industry survives. And hopefully less and less people will lose jobs, and hopefully less businesses will close, and we'll come out on the other side of all of this.
Awesome. It's a great way to kind of wrap up. I want to throw like one almost sort of like left field question to Anthony, if I could, and then pass along to Mike to kind of wrap us up. Because we have a lot of, developing artists and independent artists who will be watching this. Anthony, what is the way that you want those artists to be communicating with you and pitching you on gigs once the doors are open again at your venue?
Man, to be honest, the same way that I would want them to do, whether this mess was happening or not. Just professionalism, proving their worth and so on. But I mean, just kind of having just an understanding for how things, may or may not work out. Not to have any kind of high hopes or demands, and just to be able to kind of work the best they can with us as promoters and venues and other bands, but to be able to kind of roll with the punches, and understand that we're all kind of, dipping our toes back into the water, just kind of see how things are going to, progress and at what speed, and just, just want them to kind of be mindful of that. And work together as a team to make this as the best that we can, and just to kind of get that ball rolling again and keep the shows happening.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Mike, you said the first 10 minutes totally blew your mind. I don't think there was another 10 minutes that followed where I wasn't scribbling away over here to the left on all, taking notes on everything. But yeah, can you kind of wrap us up? I mean, there was so much good stuff here.
I'll do my best. I mean, this was an incredible panel. Thanks you guys for joining us. I mean, leaves, I love that we've got so much to think about, and really that, as I think Dave sort of started us off, I mean, we're all in the same boat, though that boat is a boat that's sailing into the unknown seas. So I'll continue to look to the stars to navigate me. And when I get in trouble, I'll call the aviator. And thankfully, he's got a relationship with the other guys. And I just think we're in a really cool spot, and this has been a lot of fun. This has been one of the more fun panels for me. I love the touring side of the business, and ultimately, I guess as we finish, Kim and I are probably thinking, or at least I know I'm thinking, in one of the other panels that we did with a record label owner, he was saying the business has been so skewed in terms of, for artists revenue in terms of touring. And so as we come out of this, I think it's going to help us adjust a little bit, in a certain sense. The touring, I think we can all agree, was probably oversaturated. And I think, there's going to be, sadly, some sacrifices of artists that might not be able to make it through, whether it's because of availabilities or finances. But for those of us that do make it through, right, we're also in this time developing strategies to not just be so dependent upon touring. So it's a really exciting time for the business. And one thing that I know, I mean, because everybody on here has been doing it as long as we have, we're going to make it through, regardless of what comes next. So thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Peter,
Thanks for having
Dave, Anthony, Kim, Mike, thank you very, very much. Greatly appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
Stay safe.
Thanks.